Hi, my name's Ben Law.
And I'm RJ Boer.
We decided to do our financial institutions project on COVID-19 and the effects on the financial markets and economy. COVID-19 caused many different problems and also helped many different financial markets. COVID-19 began to affect the U.S. and international economies as early as January of 2020 and still affects the world today. COVID-19 is a disease that is like the flu, but has been much more influential than the average flu as it has killed many different people in various different populations.
Many people saw COVID-19 as an awful time for the world, which it was, though we believe in some of the financial markets, it made many people a lot of money at the same time. COVID-19 also did ruin many businesses and at the same time helped many businesses grow, such as Amazon, which was a company that thrived during this time. Overall, COVID-19 affected all people around the globe in many different ways. And through this, it affected the U.S. financial market and economy, along with the global financial market and economy.
COVID-19 had many different household effects. It was a very tough time for many households as many jobs and businesses were lost during this time. Roughly around 22 million jobs were lost around the world, affecting families and people all across the globe. This had a drastic effect on the economy, as if people aren't making money, they aren't going to spend money in the economy. Many places around the globe were forced to go into lockdown, meaning that in many places people and businesses were not allowed to operate as they normally would. Being in lockdown meant that businesses, schools, and even public transportations were not going to be able to be used. This caused many people to lose their jobs as they were not needed or their businesses could not afford to keep them working. This caused many households to lose various sources of income, which can drastically change the lives of many families and people. Many people went from having a safe job that paid them a salary to having no job and having nowhere to go to find a new job, as many places were in a complete lockdown.
There was much room for technological advancement during this time period, such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams, which allowed adults to still have meetings for work and allowed children to go to school virtually. This allowed people to still have some success in their jobs and schoolwork, meaning the world could continue to move on during this epidemic. There were also things offered during the pandemic, such as stimulus checks, which allowed families to have a source of income during this terrible time within the U.S. Within this time, we saw a massive rise within the stock and crypto market participation. During this time, there was a rise in various stock and cryptos within the market as many more people were getting into these markets through mobile apps and services such as Coinbase, Robinhood, and Webull. COVID-19 seemed to cause a rise in interest in these markets, and many people were able to make a lot of money through these services, which is why we may see a lack of people in today's jobs, as many people have not returned to their old jobs and many people have had trouble trying to gain workers. Overall, households within the U.S. and globally were affected in many different ways. Some were affected badly and some were good. Some households saw financial success and many others saw financial distress during this pandemic.
There are many different effects on the businesses during COVID-19. COVID-19 absolutely devastated the business landscape that we're used to, especially in its earlier stages. As the pandemic continued, people all around the world learned how to adapt to the new normal, but initially they were all left terrified of a possible economic downturn. There's panic due to the fear of COVID-19 that resembled the beginning of a depressionary period for a country. Many businesses were forced to lay off employees, if not all, until further notice. Businesses all across the world slowly started to come to a screeching halt in the beginning as stay-at-home mandates were imposed to encourage people to stay home and stay safe. The COVID-19 pandemic affected every country, every business sector, and every person in some way, whether it be directly or indirectly. The repercussion of these stay-at-home protocols obviously is that nobody was leaving their homes, so there was hardly any business to be done. This caused a drastic reduction in the amount of money that exchanged hands in the market early on.
Small businesses were hit the hardest as many of them relied on people coming into their stores to purchase items, though during the pandemic this was not possible. This left many businesses without any income, meaning they could not financially continue to run their business. There was one business sector, however, that boomed tremendously during the pandemic, the technology sector. Life was put on pause at the beginning of the pandemic, is how many people described it, because people were encouraged to stay at home and not go anywhere. People still wanted to continue their daily routines, work and all, even if they were not permitted to leave the house. Businesses were forced to adapt to the new situation that had arisen, and many used the same solution. Technology was sought out to be the solution to all of the problems that related staying at home during the pandemic. Many businesses that were still operating turned to online video call services, online collaboration platforms, and more online tools to keep their business running as efficiently as possible during the harsh economic times.
Almost all technology sectors thrived during this time, especially e-commerce from companies such as Amazon. Amazon was a major business that was able to thrive through COVID-19 as people were able to shop online wherever they please, whenever and wherever they please. This was a company that was able to grow and destroy many other online marketplaces due to their footprint on this marketplace, making it very hard for any online marketplace like Amazon to compete with a company like Amazon. Through the pandemic, many businesses had to come up with ways to reach out to people through technology and survive this way. Businesses with an online platform had no chance to survive during this time, meaning if you wanted to survive, you needed to have a business that was up to date in technology. There were also various problems for businesses that still continue today in supply chains. Many companies had troubles getting their supplies that they needed during the pandemic, causing many problems for businesses, as they were not able to satisfy their customers. I was able to see this firsthand through my own dad, who worked in the sales industry of janitorial supplies such as toilet paper, paper towels, and hand sanitizers. He struggled with many customers as he was not able to reach their demands and needs because of the lack of supplies being pushed out at that time.
Today, the effects of COVID-19 are still apparent, but we've taken drastic steps forward as a country since the passage of the COVID CARES Act and the COVID relief measures taken, such as COVID relief loans and grants. COVID-19 still affects many businesses today, as many jobs are yet to be filled, as people are not willing to come back to work yet. This has been a major problem in many businesses, as there has been a major lack of workforce for many businesses, leaving people with long and hard hours. It is still unknown to this day if the economy can fully recover and become the way it was before this epidemic.
There are also many government and international effects of COVID-19. The government played a huge role in handling and the assessment of the pandemic. Initially, the government tried to downplay COVID-19 and refrain from imposing and mask mandates or stay-at-home regulations here in the U.S. This led to scrutiny, distrust, and fake media being spread to insult the government for not taking the issue at hand seriously. Various media outlets were providing false information to their viewers, making the problem at hand much worse than it needed to be. As time went on and the pandemic clearly proved it was not going anywhere anytime soon, the American government finally decided to react.
The government decided to intervene and drop a series of regulations to help and try and stimulate the battered and bruised American economy. The effects of the regulations the government imposed were both good and bad for the economy. Initially, they were great because they injected money into the economy and stimulated economic growth. However, as it has now been 2 years almost removed from the peak of the pandemic, people can see that this injection of money into the economy has caused hikes in inflation, interest rates, and many other facets of measuring the country's economic success. Currently, the economy is facing rapid jumps in inflation that have never been measured that high before. There's anticipation of a nearing economic depression within the next 10 years, as the government is struggling to this day to contain the effects of COVID-19.
Internationally, COVID-19 affected every country imaginable in some different way. Here in America, it could have been dealt with much quicker if the country had taken it seriously at first. Countries who did react quickly, such as Italy, were able to move on and minimize the effects of the pandemic much earlier than those countries who took their time to react. Other economies, such as the economy in China, were able to bounce back very well and very quickly. China's economy took a huge hit along with the US during the original outbreak of COVID-19. Though they saw a much quicker bounce back than the US due to China's quick growth was due to their ability to produce and distribute medical equipment, technology, and various other equipment during this pandemic that was needed. During the pandemic, many governments and international policies had to be changed, causing a lot of change in the world that we used to know. These changes are still in effect and are still influencing the lives of people every day around the globe.
COVID-19 affected the world as a whole, and it still does today. Financially and economically, it will take time for our world to recover from a pandemic, as nobody had planned for such an event occurring. The world as a whole will have to work together to recover from the financial and economic problems that we face during this time to help us return to a normal way of life. Though this was also a major wake-up call for our economies and financial systems around the world to be prepared and to have the technology needed to prevent these situations.
As a world as a whole, we need to prepare and be ready to fight these things to keep our economy and financial system stable in the future and to help prevent financial distress and chaos around the world. Overall, COVID-19 hurt and helped people all around the globe and showed that as a world as a whole, we must become more prepared for problems to help sustain our economies and financial institutions around the world. And that's how we thought COVID-19 affected all of our financial markets and the economy around the world.